I think my brother is a murderer. The story happened in 1999. I was 10 years old, and I saw my brother, then 13, shoot and kill our nephew, 15. Here's the story. First, our father had a gun. He was determined to stop the older man for sleeping with my sister. She was 14 at the time, so he always kept the gun in the car. On this particular day, he took the gun in the house to take me to my doctor's appointment. On my way home, he stated that he needed to go to the auto parts store and that he would drop me off at home. I got out of the car and entered the house to find my brother with our dad's gun pointing it at our nephew. The next two sentences haunted me for quite some time and was the beginning of my downward spiral. Our nephew told my brother if he shoots him, he would have a witness, referring to me. My brother then pointed the gun at me and said he would shoot me too. I told him that I was going to tell our mother, who was in the kitchen cooking, and took off to do so. Even though I didn't hear the gunshot, it didn't stop it from happening. The next thing I knew, my brother was running past me, crying. He reached our mother first, saying he didn't mean to, and I told our mother what I saw. We went to the front room, and there our nephew was laying on the ground with a gunshot to the eye. The police ruled it as an accident, but I guess a part of me never believed that. Since then, our family came and told me the conversation they have had with my brother, saying that my brother told them I shot him in the good eye, and laughing about it. Since then, he had been in and out of jail, and the last thing I know, he was in jail for animal cruelty. Apparently, him and our older sister got into a disagreement, and she had his phone inside of his phone. There were videos of him killing and decapitating a dog. She reported him to the police. One of the videos showing my brother with his hands inside of the dog's head and making it talk. I think of what you would do with a sock puppet. There was a girl he was in a relationship with, and he would beat her and burn her with a cigarette just for fun. He has jumped on quite a few times, and he watches snuff films on the dark web. If you don't know what those, just Google it, and the dictionary meaning will pop up for you. I've chosen to stay away from him, but therapy brought these feelings up, and I guess I want to know what you all think. Is my older brother a murderer? No shit. A little boy has gone missing, and the whole community have come together to find him. He went missing around some woods, which is very large, but the community are willing to do what's necessary to find him. As the search started, we had all the tools and gears necessary for the search, and we were hopeful that we would find the boy alive. I remember how happy I became when I found the boy, and I ran out to him screaming his name. I couldn't believe that I had found him, and I did it alone. Stanley, I found you, dear boy, I say to Stanley. Then Stanley looks at me angrily and replies, you haven't found me, you decrepit man. Go and try again, little boy, Stanley said to me. But you are just here, I tried to tell him. Stanley replies, go and try to find me again. And so I go off into the woods, and I felt bad about not finding Stanley, even though I just had. I couldn't believe my luck when I found Stanley again. I rejoiced so much, and I said to Stanley, Stanley, I found you. But this time the little boy, Stanley, was even more angry than before. No, you still haven't found me, you idiot, with his eyes going red and teeth going sharp. You are literally right in front of me, I say confusedly to Stanley. Go and find me, you useless man, little boy, Stanley shouts. So I wander back into the woods and I tried to find Stanley again. Where can this little boy Stanley be? And when I found him again for the third time, I was so happy again. Little boy Stanley became even more erratic. This time he had claws, and he scratched me while shouting, "You still haven't found me, you useless man!" And he had redder eyes and deeper voice. I didn't want to try and find him anymore in case I didn't find him, and little boy Stanley will be even more aggressive. I decided to turn back and just go home. I thought I had found the little boy Stanley 3 times, said I got verbally abused and made to feel stupid. I am terrified if I find Stanley, and he ends up shouting at me for not actually finding him. All those people trying to find little boy Stanley, and I hope they do. But I am done, and I am going home. Now to have some tea and go to bed. Fuck yeah. So first one was, I was wide awake, walking towards my living room. If I had remembered correctly, I was 7 to 8. This was after my parents' divorce, so that may have been the trigger, but the walls were see-through but outlined by lines, so I could see their general shapes. Saw my stepdad and mom sitting in 2 rocking chairs in front of our fireplace. They were reading newspapers. I walked towards them. They were not reacting to me at all. I was confused, looked around, and realized things didn't seem normal. They put the newspapers down and had no eyes or mouth, just empty pits. Scared me quite a bit. I backed up and backed into a large dark figure who grabbed me, and I saw 2 glowing eyes in the pitch black, and the dark figure said, "We will see more of you soon." To the point I was seeing a dark, shadowy figure in the darkness every night trying to sleep, then snapped out of it and was standing there in the living room with my parents saying, "What's up?" Watched the movie Silent Hill and straight up was like, damn, that's how my episode as a kid went both times. Well, it felt real. Second episode, I was at my dad's. I moved in with him and lived with him for a year. We were watching the TV show Bones. I love this show as a kid. That paired with the CSI was awesome. So we were watching it, having a decent time, both enjoying the show and in turn enjoying each other's company. I looked at the TV, looked back at my dad, and said, "That's interesting, right?" And he was gone. Most likely went into the kitchen, I don't know. But I heard muffled noises coming from the closet right next to the couch. I walked up and opened it. There was 2 bodies hanging by hooks. One was bloody and dead. The second one was a kid screaming and amputated and crying. I froze a bit and was so confused / scared. I slammed the door shut and ran towards the kitchen where I thought my dad was at. Run into him, but didn't feel. Still felt uneasy, like something wasn't quite right. Looked up at him, and his face was pitch black like the shadow figures from my first illusion. I then freaked out again and snapped out of it. To my dad shaking me, asking me what was wrong, that I just ran right into him crying for no reason. I don't know if that counts as scary, but for me it certainly was terrifying as a kid and traumatic enough to where I still remember it 17 years later. I still don't understand what happened to me or why I went through these. They were years apart too, so only had 2 very vivid ones like this, but many days sucked. When I was a child, something used to watch me. It only happened at night in my room, and it scared the absolute hell out of me. I gave this thing a name, and it wasn't a particularly scary name, but rest assured that it didn't make him any less horrifying. It was humanoid and wore a suit and tie, and because of this, I called him the Tie Man. His skin wasn't unnatural color with bumps and looked melted. The closest approximation I could describe him would be some sort of goblin. An acrid, musky odor filtered out of his horrible boils and made me sick to my stomach. I'd be lying in bed, and out of nowhere, a hole would form in the ceiling. It always in front of my bedroom door, which blocked my exit. This seemed to be no accident. He would hang upside down from the ceiling with only his upper torso showing and watch me. Many times I was too paralyzed with fear to move and could only wait for him to get to me. Many times his mouth would move as if talking, but I never heard him say anything. Often he would raise his arm and point at me in some silent accusation, glaring at me with unknown hatred. Every time I wanted to scream, the air would leave my lungs, and I could only press harder into my bed and pray he didn't come for me. All I could think was, please don't let this thing touch me. On occasion, my voice would return long enough for me to call parents for help. He would scowl and disappear right before they'd enter my room. My parents would ask what was wrong, to which I always uttered, "The Thai man is back." Sometimes, if he kept me hypnotized for long enough, he would get closer. Thankfully, this rarely happened. Because of it, was so much worse. He'd pry himself out of the hole and use his hands to scale the wall towards me. When this first happened, I realized that he actually didn't have any legs. He would keep his eyes locked with mine, which was how he paralyzed me, as he would slowly pull himself along the wall towards my bed. It would get as close to me as possible and reached out its wretched, mangled hand. I'd shiver uncontrollably, but was powerless to whatever this thing had over me. By squinting my eyes shut, I could only pretend it wasn't there long enough before it would inexplicably disappear. This went on until I got to the age where monsters in the dark room were no longer a fear for me. I never saw him again while awake, but my memories never let him go. Sometimes in my dreams I would see that thing hanging down from my ceiling with that awful leer pointing at me, paralyzing me, and watching me with a loathsome stare until I felt my mind begin to break down. Years later, we were moving out of the house, and I'd long forgotten about the Thai man. That was until we cleaned out the attic. I was up there to help move everything out, handing items down in a productivity line. The summer heat was unbearable up there, so we moved as quick as possible, yet the momentum stopped abruptly as an item stirred that memory deep within my psyche. To my absolute astonishment, there was a full suit complete with a tie stuffed deep into the corner of the attic. It was nothing recent, as dust was not just on it, but had settled into the fabric. My hands went into a tremor as I pulled it out of the corner space. My mind locked up for a moment in disbelief as I recalled the awful memory. I didn't even hear my family calling for me, asking for the next item. They noted how pale I went as I handed them the suit as if in a trance. I was told to come down from the attic as they were concerned I was going to have a heat stroke, but my constitution had nothing to do with the high temperature. After I had some water and calmed down enough to speak, I relayed to my parents my recollection of the Thai man. My mother stated that it must be an old suit of my father's, but from the strained expression on her face, I knew better. My dad had no recollection of the suit. Although despite of them telling me this, I could have sworn all my life they exchanged a look. Perhaps it was just the heat. I researched heavily into the Thai man, hoping to find some fragment of information to help ease my conscience. Yet I found nothing. Even more strangely, the suit that we found disappeared after that day. I've never seen it since. Maybe this time man existed somewhere between reality and fiction. Or maybe it was some weird coincidence. Either way, this left an impression of the time man that I would never forget, even to this day. I have an inexplicable urge to check the ceiling by my bedroom door and expect to see him there. Maybe he is somewhere still out there, hiding and waiting for his next victim to come along. Hating, waiting, and watching. Boom, boom, boom.